It was a quiet Sunday afternoon, the kind where the house felt almost too still, broken only by the soft hum of the refrigerator in the kitchen. I'd been home alone for most of the day. Mom was out running errands, and my stepbrother Aaron had just gotten back from work. We hadn't seen much of each other lately. His schedule had been hectic, and we mostly kept to ourselves. Aaron and I were never exactly close, not in the way most siblings are. We didn't argue, but there was always this quiet distance between us. He was my stepbrother by marriage, and even after 3 years of sharing the same house, it still felt like there was a wall neither of us could break. Maybe we were just too different. Or maybe it was something unspoken, lingering in the air that neither of us had ever addressed. I stood in the kitchen scrolling idly through my phone while waiting for the water to boil. I was making pasta, something simple to fill the silence. Aaron had come home earlier than usual, but I'd heard him go straight to his room without saying a word. That wasn't unusual for us. Then I heard footsteps echo down the hallway, slow, steady, unmistakable. I didn't have to turn around to know it was Aaron. His presence always had a way of changing the atmosphere the moment he walked into a room. "You making something?" he asked, his tone casual but carrying an edge I couldn't quite read. "Just some pasta," I said, glancing back briefly. "Want some?" He shrugged and leaned against the counter across from me. He looked relaxed, but his sharp eyes were studying me in that familiar, unreadable way. Aaron was older by a few years, always more confident, the kind of person who seemed sure of everything. "I might have some," he said after a moment. "You've been quiet lately." I didn't know what to say, so I just shrugged and turned back to stir the pasta. "Yeah, I guess." Without warning, Aaron stepped closer. His sudden nearness made me tense for a second, not out of fear, but because his quiet energy always carried weight. "You okay?" he asked, his voice softer now, genuine. "I'm fine," I said quickly, trying to sound casual. "Why wouldn't I be?" He didn't answer right away. Instead, he leaned slightly forward to check the pot, his arm brushing lightly against mine. The small gesture was nothing, just an accident, but somehow it broke the tension that had been hanging between us all day. There was something about the way Aaron moved, calm, confident, and completely at ease in my space. It always made me a little uneasy, not because he did anything wrong, but because he carried a kind of quiet energy that filled the room. "You've seemed off lately," Aaron said softly, his voice low but sincere. "Like something's been bothering you." I swallowed hard, pretending to focus on the boiling pot, but it was hard to ignore the weight of his presence. I could feel his attention on me, not judgmental, just aware. It was strange how easily he noticed things I tried to hide. "I'm fine," I said again, though even I could hear the uncertainty in my voice. That's when something shifted. Instead of walking away, Aaron stepped beside me and reached over to turn off the stove. The moment felt heavier than it should have, not because of closeness, but because of everything unsaid between us. "You don't seem fine," he said gently. "Feels like you've been avoiding me." He wasn't wrong. I had been keeping my distance, though I couldn't explain why. Maybe it was guilt, or maybe I just didn't know how to face him anymore. There was tension, not anger, but something unspoken that had been building for months. "I'm not avoiding you," I said quietly, my voice shaking slightly despite my effort to sound steady. Aaron sighed, his tone softening. "Then talk to me. Whatever it is, don't carry it alone." When I finally glanced at him, the look in his eyes caught me off guard. It wasn't anger or frustration, it was concern. Real, genuine concern. My chest tightened with a mix of relief and confusion. For the first time in a long while, I realized maybe he wasn't the problem. Maybe I was just afraid of being seen. Truly seen. "I'm not pretending," I murmured, barely audible. Aaron gave a small, understanding smile, one that said he wasn't going to push anymore. He just nodded and stepped back, giving me space. The silence that followed wasn't awkward anymore. It felt peaceful. I caught my breath, startled by the sudden weight of the moment. My body reacted before my mind could catch up, and I didn't know what to do with the rush of emotion that followed. "I think you're holding something in," Aaron said quietly. "But it's okay. You don't have to pretend everything's fine." The kitchen suddenly felt smaller, the air thicker. I could feel the pressure of everything left unsaid pressing down between us. His voice was calm, but the weight behind it was impossible to ignore. My thoughts tangled into a blur, confusion, guilt, frustration, all mixing together. How had things become so complicated between us? How had silence turned into this heavy tension that neither of us could escape? "I'm just tired," I muttered finally, staring down at the floor. Aaron sighed, his tone softening. "You don't have to explain," he said. "Just don't shut everyone out. You do that sometimes." His words caught me off guard because they were true. I did hide. From others, from myself, from the parts of life I didn't want to deal with. My pulse was racing, not from fear but from the intensity of being seen too clearly. For a second, I didn't know if I wanted to run or just breathe. "I don't know what you're talking about," I managed, trying to steady my voice. Aaron didn't push. He simply gave a small nod and stepped back, giving me space. The tension between us didn't disappear, but it changed. It softened into something more human. For the first time, I realized it wasn't anger or resentment keeping us apart. It was everything unspoken, the things we'd both been too afraid to admit. My body felt tense, my thoughts spiraling out of control. Every emotion I'd been burying for months suddenly rose to the surface. Confusion, anger, guilt, and something I couldn't even name. I started, but the words caught in my throat. Aaron took a step closer, not in a threatening way, but with quiet concern. "You don't have to keep pretending," he said softly. "Just talk to me. Whatever this is, keeping it inside is only hurting you." The air between us grew heavy, charged with everything left unsaid. For a moment, I couldn't look at him. The truth was sitting right there, waiting to be spoken. "I've been trying to ignore it," I admitted finally. "All the things I never said? The way I shut everyone out." Aaron nodded slowly. "You don't have to run from it anymore." I turned toward him, meeting his eyes. There was no anger there, just understanding. Somehow, that made it harder to hold back. The walls I'd built around myself began to crack. All the tension that had been building for so long broke open in silence, not through touch, but through honesty. For the first time, it felt like we were really seeing each other, not as strangers under the same roof, but as two people trying to find peace in the same place. I caught my breath, my thoughts spinning out of control. Everything inside me felt like it was moving too fast, slipping beyond what I could handle. "I think you're holding back," Aaron said softly. "But it's okay. You don't have to keep pretending." The air grew heavy, like the room itself was shrinking around us. My chest tightened, my pulse racing, and suddenly every emotion I'd buried came rushing to the surface. Guilt, fear, the ache of things left unsaid. I started, but my voice cracked. Words failed me, tangled somewhere between my mind and my heart. Aaron stepped closer, his tone steady. "It's all right," he said. "You don't owe anyone an explanation. Just be honest with yourself at least." That stopped me cold. The quiet truth in his voice hit harder than I expected. I turned slightly, enough to meet his eyes, and what I saw there wasn't anger or judgment, it was concern. Real concern. The kind that comes from someone who's seen more than they say. "You've been avoiding me," he murmured, studying me carefully. "Or maybe avoiding what's really bothering you." I swallowed hard. "Maybe I have," I admitted. "Maybe I just didn't want to face it." He nodded, a faint understanding in his expression. "You don't have to run anymore." The silence stretched, filled with everything we hadn't said for months. I could feel my heart pounding, not from fear, but from the weight of honesty pressing between us. "This changes things," I whispered finally, voice barely steady. "Yeah," he said, eyes soft. "But whatever comes next, we'll take it slow. One step at a time. I nodded, trying to catch my breath. The heaviness in the air began to ease, replaced by something calmer, like the first deep breath after a long storm. For the first time, the space between us didn't feel like a wall. It felt like understanding, quiet, patient, and real. Aaron smiled faintly. "We'll figure it out," he said. "We always do." And somehow I believed him. The tension that had filled the kitchen for so long finally broke, replaced by something steady, something that felt a lot like hope. "You okay?" he asked, his voice gentle but steady, filled with the same weight that had been hanging between us for months. I nodded, though the truth was I was still trying to make sense of everything that had just happened. "Yeah, I'm okay," I managed to say, even though my heart was still racing. "But now that it's happened," he said slowly, his eyes searching mine as if he was looking for the right words, "I don't know what comes next." There were no simple answers. This was new territory for both of us, fragile and uncertain. Aaron stepped closer, his expression soft but serious. His hand rose slightly, brushing the side of my face in a gesture that felt careful, thoughtful. The touch made my chest tighten, not from fear, but from something deeper, something real. "I don't want to ruin this," Aaron said quietly, his voice calm but full of sincerity. "I don't want to rush into something we're not ready for, but I also don't want to ignore what's happening." His honesty hit me harder than I expected. There was a truth in his tone that made it impossible to look away. "I don't want to mess it up either," I said softly. "But we need to be careful. Things like this, they can change everything." Aaron nodded, still calm, still steady. "We don't need to figure it all out tonight," he said. "We can take it one step at a time." His words brought a strange kind of peace. Maybe we didn't have to rush. Maybe it was okay to just let things unfold. I took a deep breath, feeling the weight in my chest start to fade. "One step at a time," I echoed. Aaron smiled faintly, his hand dropping to my shoulder. "We'll figure it out," he said softly. "Together." And somehow, that was enough. The air between us felt lighter now, calmer. For the first time in a long time, it didn't feel confusing anymore. It just felt real. I glanced toward the stove, noticing the pot still sitting there. "We should probably check on the pasta," I said quietly. Aaron laughed under his breath, the tension fading. "Yeah, before we end up with a disaster." We turned back to the counter, and even though everything had changed, it felt okay. The silence wasn't heavy anymore. It was comfortable, full of something unspoken but understood. It was out in the open now, and even though everything felt different, there was a strange peace in that honesty. As I stirred the pasta and Aaron set 2 plates on the counter, I caught a glimpse of him from the corner of my eye. Something about the way he moved, calm, grounded, made my chest tighten again. It was like seeing him for the first time, all over again. But the story didn't end there. When we finally sat down at the small kitchen table, the air between us still held a quiet charge, though softer now. We didn't need to talk about what had happened, not yet. There was no rush. Time felt slower, more forgiving, and that was enough for now. After a moment of silence, Aaron's eyes lifted to mine. "So, what do we do now?" he asked. The question hung there, delicate and uncertain. We'd crossed into something new, something that couldn't be undone, but maybe that wasn't a bad thing. "We keep going," I said quietly, but with a certainty that surprised even me. Aaron smiled, that small, real smile that always managed to reach his eyes. "One day at a time," he murmured. I nodded. "Yeah, one day at a time." The tension that had once felt heavy was now something gentler, easier to carry. There were still questions, plenty of them, but the fear wasn't as sharp. Maybe crossing, That line wasn't an ending after all. Maybe it was the start of something new. As the night stretched on, our conversation flowed naturally. The words came easier, our laughter filling the space between us. It felt familiar, but changed, like the same melody played in a different key. We didn't have to hide anymore. We didn't have to pretend. Somewhere between the quiet moments and soft laughter, I realized something important. Maybe everything really would be okay. We would figure it out, together. The weight of the night settled around us, calm and warm. Minutes slipped into hours, and the tension that once lived in silence had softened into something steady and real. We sat there talking about nothing in particular, yet everything felt different. Aaron leaned back, his eyes steady on mine, and a shiver ran through me, not from nerves but from recognition. Something long unspoken was finally in the open, and for the first time that didn't feel frightening. It felt right. "I never thought we'd end up here," Aaron said softly, his voice calm but full of truth. There was something different in the way he spoke, a gentleness that caught me off guard. I looked at him, feeling my chest tighten at the honesty in his eyes. This wasn't the confident, easygoing side I was used to. This was someone vulnerable, real, and somehow that made everything feel more meaningful. "Me too," I admitted quietly. "I don't know how we got here, but I'm not sorry." A small smile curved across Aaron's lips, the kind that made something inside me shift. He reached out slightly, his fingers brushing the edge of the table, a subtle gesture that carried more weight than words. There was no urgency, no rush, just a quiet understanding between us. "I'm not sorry either," he said, voice steady and calm. "It's complicated, but we'll figure it out." His words felt like a promise, one that filled the space between us with warmth and calm. We didn't have all the answers, and maybe we didn't need them. What mattered was that we were both here, choosing to face whatever came next together. Aaron stood, moving slowly around the table until he was beside me. His hand rested lightly on my shoulder, the touch grounding, reassuring. Somehow he had a way of making me feel both steady and uncertain at the same time. "We should probably get some sleep," he said after a pause, his voice softer now, almost thoughtful. I nodded, even though part of me didn't want the night to end. There was something about the quiet between us, safe, fragile, almost sacred, that I didn't want to lose. But he was right. It was late, and we both needed time to take it all in. As he helped me up, the air between us stayed still, charged but calm. We stood close, neither moving away, both aware that something had shifted for good. "Are you sure about this?" I asked quietly, unsure if I was seeking reassurance or just voicing what we both felt. Aaron met my eyes, steady and sincere. "I've never been more sure," he said. "We'll take it slow, one step at a time." His words eased something inside me. The uncertainty didn't disappear, but it no longer felt heavy. Taking things one step at a time meant we didn't have to solve everything tonight. We just had to be honest, present. Before we turned in, Aaron gave a small, comforting smile, one that said more than words could. It wasn't about what came next or what it meant. It was about trust and understanding and the quiet connection that had been there all along, just waiting to be seen, quietly waiting for the right moment to surface. "I'll see you in the morning," Aaron said, his voice calm and gentle. I nodded, unable to find the right words as he stepped back, giving me a final, thoughtful look before heading down the hallway toward his room. The silence that followed felt heavier somehow, like the air itself was holding its breath. I stayed there for a moment, trying to make sense of everything that had just happened. We hadn't planned any of it, but somehow it felt inevitable, like This conversation had been waiting to happen for a long time, and now that it finally had, I couldn't imagine pretending nothing had changed. As I walked toward my room, my thoughts raced, tangled between uncertainty and calm. Yet beneath it all, there was something peaceful. Whatever this was, whatever it would become, it felt honest. And for the first time in a long while, I didn't feel afraid of what might come next. I welcomed it. I lay down, the day's weight still humming quietly in my chest, until sleep finally pulled me under. The next morning, I woke to the sound of soft footsteps outside my door. For a brief moment, I wondered if everything that had happened last night had just been a dream. But then Aaron appeared in the doorway, a calm smile on his face, and I knew it had been real. "Morning," he said casually, though his tone carried the same steady warmth as before. "Morning," I replied, sitting up. "Sleep well?" He smiled, an easy, knowing smile that eased the space between us. "Better than I expected," he said. There was no need for long explanations. The understanding was already there, quiet but clear. Whatever came next, we'd face it together. Aaron leaned against the doorframe, his gaze steady. "You ready for whatever happens next?" he asked. I met his eyes, a small smile tugging at my lips. "Yeah," I said softly. "One day at a time." Aaron nodded, his expression warm and certain. One day at a time. And in that moment, everything felt right. It wasn't perfect, and it wouldn't be easy, but it was real. And for now, that was enough.